Welcome to another AriasWave crypto market update. So in this video, I'm just going to look at two coins here, the big one, Bitcoin and XLM. So I've changed my account a little bit on this one. And as you can see, it's pointing to us being in a D wave, or sorry, Bitcoin being in a D wave. And this is not the same as XLM, but it does fall a little bit more in line with what's going on in the stock market. In the stock market, we are in a D wave, according to my analysis. So the thing that I can see here is that Bitcoin is in a big D wave of wave two. So having had this count from the highs, wave quarter, basically labeled a wave one, this particular pattern that occurred afterwards is the reason why I've changed the count slightly. And that's because the first wave looked like a zigzag, the second wave looks like a zigzag. Okay, that's very basically why. And the C wave happened in a very unusual manner. A 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then this move down since then, in my opinion, is what appears to be a pretty big D wave. So once we get this big D wave completed, we will see a bounce, but I'll talk about that in a sec. So down at the lows, you can see that we had a move up, a move down, and then a sharp 5-wave move. So this is part of the reason why I've come to this count, is because these patterns occur in only, in certain places in a correction. Therefore, if you see anything that doesn't quite add up, then you have to take the other view, right? So in essence, this move here being an ABC, right, is the same as this being an ABC, right? You can see it there, right? But if you understand AriasWave, there is only one pattern that occurs in the markets. You're never going to get something different. The only problem is identifying the pattern is not always easy in the beginning. Okay, now I did call this top in Bitcoin, by the way, and I did say that this is going to be a C wave down many moons ago. Okay, I changed my view a few times, but it turned out to be looking like it's going to be right. The C wave down is going to be pretty deep. Okay. Now I'm not going to go into the long-term pattern because my prediction as to how low this will go, a lot of people will disagree with, and disagreement is the reason I changed my view in the first place from it being a B wave, and it turned out to be, well, it looks like it's turning out to be pretty accurate. So from now on, it's just about the analysis. It's not about opinions. It's just about the waves and what I'm seeing on a chart. So there's no more of that from now on. That's probably why the trolls have disappeared, is because they probably lost a lot of money, as a lot of people have. Understandable. So moving forward, we're looking at this D wave down. So I can expect that there's going to be the D wave completing to the downside first. Okay, so it will appear as though the market is starting to tank even more, but then it'll bounce. And the reason why it'll bounce is because we're going to be in a wave E of the wave B of the wave D. Okay, so when I say wave D, I don't mean this wave D here, I mean the larger wave D. Okay, we're in a large wave D. Okay, so obviously, I like to color code my charts according to the material I use to teach this. But fractal patterns can often be complex. That's why I keep it consistent. So this mini D wave, yet to complete, should basically produce a move, first a correction, then another leg down, and then a bounce. Okay, so that bounce may come back up to retest this area of, basically support becoming resistance. Okay, so this area here looks important, and we could see a pullback to around that area. In my opinion, it's likely because within a zigzag, you usually get, unless you get an expanded zigzag that's really expanded to the downside, this doesn't look like it is. You'll likely get a bounce back to at least what I would say here is 0.382. Okay, so back to 29,000 potentially, right? Because you've got areas of confluence. Okay, so you've got this area here, which is it looks important. It was support for a bit, and then it obviously fell down beneath it. But then you've also got the minimum retracement, right, for a pullback. You could go a bit higher potentially, but then we're looking for that wave C leg down. Okay, so what would that look like in terms of length? Well, obviously, if A wave's this long, okay, then we'd need to see a similar move again sorry, if the A wave is this long, the A wave here in brackets, A wave of the D wave, we'd need to see a similar length. Okay, so whether it's 50%, 382, I don't know what difference it'll make, but just so I can, so you can understand why I'm, predicting this. So it's in line with the XLM view that we might see a pump for wave C. Okay, so the wave C pump in XLM will be just part of a wave 2 correction, whereas this pump here is part of a D wave correction, because obviously Bitcoin is a much larger, asset in terms of value and in terms of, historical, data. It's a much larger pattern. So fractally, it's larger. So a small move in Bitcoin equals a large move in XLM potentially, right? But regardless of that, we're working within a D wave here. And the proof to me is what happened at the lows here. We had an A, a B, a C. That C wave should not be there unless it's part of something else. Okay, unless it's part of a B wave still unfolding. Okay, potentially it could be the case that we saw a 5-wave move here, 335, potentially a bounce incoming, but that limits how high it could go. So yeah, I'm keeping to this count for now unless something changes. And especially because we are looking for a pretty decent pump in XLM, it would appear that it would come from the last piece of the B wave correction, right, for wave E. So that could be wrong. I'll track it as it goes, but at this point in time, once we get a bit more of a corrective process happening at the lows here, perhaps a dip beneath the previous low from June, then I would expect this to bounce. Now you'll notice that so far Bitcoin has dipped below that 5-wave move that occurred, whereas XLM hasn't. So I'll get to that in a minute. So once we see this D wave bounce, breaking down below this area, it's possible that the E wave might come back to retest a break of this important area, which is another important area. And that area is the level of the all-time high from 2017. okay, which is around 20,000. So if we break below 20,000, I would say more than likely would get a bounce to retest that area where once again support becomes resistance. But I don't see that happening until we get the rest of this corrective portion in order for us to see that leg down that will really cause some worry in the market. So moving on now to XLM. Sorry, one sec. Right. So XLM still got the same count. Still believe this is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 move. Beginning of bear market down. That wave one ended in May this year. I still believe that we had an A, B pattern down that barely just dipped below the previous low there for that pattern to confirm that it was a B wave. And I did say in my previous video that we will see a C wave bounce. Now, that's still in progress. And as I mentioned just then on the Bitcoin chart, this move never went below that 5-wave move. Right now, that 5-wave move in Bitcoin is a bit different than the 5-wave move for XLM. Okay, because according to this count, this is the beginning of a C wave bounce. So what could happen for Bitcoin to make that low that we're expecting, that just that smaller move lower, and then basically get this ready for a pump, would be the corrective process that's happening within this wave at the lows. Now, I'll have a quick look at it, but I'm not going to go into much detail on it. So because of the sharpness of this move down, one could assume that this is a C wave. And then you had a D and an E. So what's happening now here at this point is most likely a 1, and you've got an A, B, C. So you're probably going to see a D and an E, right? And then we'll go for wave 3 up. Okay, so if you didn't catch that, I'll just label it. Right, so it appears as though wave 1 ended here. We had a 33535. So wave 2 ended here. Right, and then we had a wave 1. Okay, and then we had a B, C, and now we're in the process of a D before we see an E, and then that should mark the end of wave 2. Once that happens, I believe we will see a move higher, a pump, right? I don't think that we're going to see price fall below this low, the start of wave 1, because obviously that would break the rules. In fact, it would break it even if it went below this area. Okay, if it went below this area right here, it would invalidate this count. Right, so is this unusual for a wave count? Not really. It's not really unusual. I think it's more just paying attention to the waves that sort of makes it clearer. In terms of, could this be something else? At the moment, it doesn't look like it, simply because you've got that C wave. That could be like a 5-wave move for a still in progress D wave, perhaps, but it just doesn't seem likely. Just because this looks like an E wave. Thinking that this is a ABC as well, I don't think so, because the sharpest move is in the middle, and then you wouldn't have a wave 1. So that looks correct. Yeah, so let's just leave it as that for now. In terms of buying opportunity, well, I did say already, once we get a pullback, that's a good buying opportunity. I said it in my previous video. So that happened, and we're higher now. So it looks like the opportunity has happened already. or it's still a good opportunity, or it'll go a little bit higher and come back down, a little bit lower maybe, but it may not. It may not come back down that low. We just don't know. And I don't think that's likely for a wave 3. But in saying that, this is still cheap, right? It's still cheap if we're going to get a pump to roughly, I think it's potentially around 24 cents. That's double, right? You've got a doubling there. And the reason I think that it could bounce that high is because that's the previous wave 4, right? In terms of, Elliott wave, that wave 4, previous wave 4 pullback can be accurate at times, but it's always best to just keep an eye on the waves. I don't think that this C wave will be a weak move, simply because we need to have some kind of pullback that makes sense, right? After all, we did have a weak wave 1 down, okay? That's considered a pretty weak, type 1 week 5 wave move according to AriasWave. So there is a bit of pressure building up at the lows here to get a bit of a pump, right? And I think that once we get that, then we'll start to see things change a little bit, probably due to the environment at the time, and volatility will increase, and then eventually you'll get some pretty big moves in the market. So at this point, that count remains intact for a wave C up. So in terms of, making a small profit during this period, it is likely, very likely, according to the count. Okay, but that's something that you need to gauge. Something that you need to do is learn the waves, right? Learn AriasWave if you can. It's definitely a much more objective approach to understanding each wave structure and basically the whole set of corrective patterns that occur every time there's a correction. And that's the only way I'd be able to actually label these charts with a level of accuracy that can be used, ongoing on an ongoing basis in each video that I post. Okay, so that's pretty much it for now. As I've mentioned before, I just think it's going to oscillate around the current levels, until we get that, end of wave 2 correction, which still hasn't happened. And the way that it will happen, it'll be interesting to see that, because you never know. After we get a pump, we could see a wave D that basically pushes this down below these lows, right, and then comes back to retest them in wave E. So hopefully you found this video interesting and informative. Thank you.